Hi everyone. A few of you by now would have seen videos from the inside of this car. Now I just got the old roll cage out of it. I'm about to start making a new one. You've got the holes there where the old cage came out of. I'm probably going to put the main hoop just in front of the cross beam there. I think it'll tie in fairly well with the door pillar. And then the front legs will probably come down just behind where those holes were for the previous front legs. Got all the steel, and I've got the TIG welder, and I've got the bender. All I need now is lots of cardboard templates, lots of measuring, and lots of welding. And hopefully I'll try and document as much of this as I can. Got the windscreen and the rear windows out, which made it a lot easier to get the old cage out of it, seeing as it was a bolt-in jobby. So anyway, I've got to put this down and get stuck into it. Okay, we're going to start with the set out for this main hoop. We've got our seat belt bolt here, so I don't want to go messing with that too much. I'm going to try and get the plate. What I'm going to do is cut holes in the floor pan so that we can get the cage down so we can weld around the top, and we'll come back up and we'll sit on plates. I picked a brand new pen so there's nothing coming out. Also under here, about here, is the chassis rail, so I probably want to end this plate at least over the top of that chassis rail so it's not on the outside of it, and I'll come in and bend up. That'll be the bottom plate. I may still put a top plate in it yet. I'll wait and see on that. We'll also bring it up to the top here, probably down here, across to there, and that's not exactly a strong piece of metal there, so I'm not going to really rely on that to provide anything. I might be able to run a weld. No, I'll just leave that out of it. So yeah, this plate will come down here and across there, like that. So I'll clean up all that area, probably do the same on the other side. And there's nothing underneath here, so I can cut a hole in there so we can get the leg of the roll bar down through the floor. Okay, I'm going to clean this up a bit. Obviously a bit of safety gear, goggles and that. Most of you who know me probably don't see me wearing these very often. The truth is I've needed glasses since I was about 13. I've just been wearing contacts around for the past decade or so. But when it comes to small stuff like this, the contacts, they focus a little bit further out, and I find it really, really hard to see, especially when I'm welding. So go back to the old glasses for doing this stuff, and need the full goggles for it. Won't be any need to clean it all up, just around the edges, and then I'll attack it with the plasma. Okay, I've cleaned up a bit around these welds, not welds, and this, you can see these spot welds here, one there and one there, probably another one just there. The outside flange of the chassis rail is underneath. So I'll come back inside that and cut that out. There's not very strong metal in there anyway, so you can see where it's been crinkled up when the old plate from the old roll cage has been tightened up. So just take it out to the edge of those holes. And along here, I'll take those holes out as well. That'll give me a bit of room to manoeuvre the main leg around, and the base plate for the cage will come out over there anyway to start to when I've finished with it. Okay, plasma torch happening here. Hopefully that makes things a bit easier. Right, doesn't look too bad. Time for the other side. So there's the hole we just created on the driver's side. You can actually see when you're looking pretty much straight down on it, there's our hole for the seatbelt bolt. That's the original factory hole. That from there all the way down to there is actually sloping inwards. So we want to put the roll cage, the base, as close to this corner as we can, which is why when you build a pedestal for it you can do that, because it comes up to about there, so you can start the roll cage out here instead of in there. But still, we're going to need that clearance to be able to weld the top of the cage when it comes time to do that. There's one of the factory seams underneath the car. You can't see it from here, but it's sort of like the edge of the sill where it's welded on, and there's right on the edge. Oops, if you can see it, there's right on the edge of the chassis rail. It goes underneath and comes into about here somewhere. So when we finally do the plate for that, it'll come out and over here, and I'll weld it down there and across here. And then up. We'll miss that because I still want to be able to use that hopefully as one of the mounting points. We'll see. It may be easier just to come straight up and cover it and then put a mount for the seatbelt on the bracket somewhere. Okay, now we've got our two holes, one on that side. It doesn't look pretty from this angle, and one on this side. Really need now to measure down measure across, I should say, from the back of this corner to the back of the corner on the other side, because that's going to be the outside diameter of the main hoop. The way I'll achieve that is I'll actually drop a plumb bob down through and mark it out on the ground and measure across. So we've got our holes now on both sides for the base of the main hoop. I've also dropped the plumb bob down to the ground and measured across to the other side. We've got 1200 from the outside to the outside. Next thing I've done is just quickly knocked up some cardboard templates so that I can cut out and bend a piece of 3mm mild steel to that shape. I just checked on the other side and it's the same on the other side, so I can use the template for both sides. And I'll have to make up a little jig for the press and bend them up to that angle. Okay, we've cut out the two plates now for the base of the main hoop off the template. Tidied them up a little bit. Just remember with these ones we're going to have one way and one the other way, so you don't want to bend them both the same way. I measured it up from within the car, just with that little angle, so now I've got to bend it up to 113 degrees. And I just cut a couple little notches in there so I can transfer the bend line onto it. You can easily do the same by just taking out some notches on the end of it. Line it up. mark it out. So same with the other one. Okay, so the first job for today was to bend up the base plates for the main hoop. To do this I got a 20-ton press here. Quickly knocked this up this morning. It's just makes it easier than trying to hang on to everything while you're getting everything lined up underneath it. It doesn't actually take any of the load, this part of it. It's going to be pressed down, so all it's doing is holding it into place while I get everything lined up underneath it. That's good enough there. Got a V block there. It's got a deep one on this side and only a shallow one on this side. A sharp radius. It doesn't need to be a super sharp radius because in the bottom of that corner of the car it doesn't come to a point. So line that up under there. We're not going to 90 degrees with this one anyway. Now I've got my little template here that I made up yesterday, so I'll take it out and just check to see how close we're getting to it. That's actually not bad for a first guess. I'm going to take it over to the car now and see how well it fits in there. Of course, now's where the fun of fitting it all together starts. It's almost close there, but now that I notice it, it's probably a bit hard to see on the camera. It gets to there, there's actually another ridge in, so the flat part on the top probably needs to have one little bend in it. And that'll be about on that line down there. So I'm going to put another crease in it there and we'll see if it fits a bit better. Okay, after a little bit more fiddling, we've got this corner plate to fit in. Ended up having to take an extra little notch out of there. Probably a bit too much, probably could have come back to there. That's not worries, probably won't weld along there anyway because there's nothing behind it. I had to put a little bend in that there because the floor actually curves a little bit down there, it's not exactly straight. And that slight bend across there, so there's another bend line in there. But all in all it fits pretty good. Some gaps under there which I'll hammer up from below once I get around to welding it in, but it's good enough for now. So it's off to make the other side. Okay, now I've got the base plates made for the main hoop. It's time to do a bit of measuring to figure out exactly what dimensions we need to bend this main hoop to. I've been measuring up, doing a bit of drawing preliminary with the aid of this laser level which I've centered. Probably can't see it there, but it's centered on the over here of the seatbelt hole, just to give you a reference so I can keep coming back to it. From that, once I find the tape measure, I can measure down from the roof and it gives me a line, it gives me the distance back to that table, wherever I need to go. And the same when measuring up from the floor. So I know the distance there down to the plates that I've just made. Actually brings it back out over here to get it exactly level. So using that laser and the dimensions that I've measured, you can see I've still got the laser on because it's coming across the paper. I've come up with that. I'll check those measurements now with the radius up to the roof
that distance there, 91mm, just to make sure that that's going to be the right distance. There's my datum line down there, so you can imagine that the datum line's something like that, so I can measure from it. Okay, a little bit more measuring up, and my first assumptions were a little bit out. So what I've done is I've put a bar across between the two window frames. It is level, and I've marked a centre mark on that, and also on the right hand side I've put a bar, just a piece of RHS vertically. So what I'm going to do now is measure the actual angle that I need for the top part of the hoop. I made up a little angle finder. Just get cardboard, close enough. And sit that on top of the bar and just eyeball the side, because I can line it up pretty closely with the B colour there, just by looking at it. And that's the point there, because that's 1200 from outside to outside there, so 600 out from the centre line. So I think if I can bring the main hoop up there and start the bend there and take it up to the roof line, that'll be good. It'll keep it a reasonable distance out. I'll be able to tie back into this side here fairly easily. Should be good to just go and revise the drawings now, and we'll see what it comes out to. It's from the end of the laser down to that point there, we're about 140mm. Okay, just finished making some revisions to the drawing. Laser line in my face. And finally checking out before we go cutting things out. You only really want to cut a roll cage main hoop out once. Don't ask me how I know that. Measured out and I've marked up on the roof where the end of this main hoop bend is going to finish. It's actually looking pretty good. So what I do now is measure the distance up from our datum it is. And I'm looking for about 100mm, which leaves a little gap to the roof. About 110 there. 100's about there. That probably leaves me about a finger width gap between the top of the bend and the roof. So that's all pretty good. I'm fairly happy with that. We'll leave a bit of extra on the base of the legs anyway, so we can chop that off and load it back once it's all in. And we've got to learn how to use the bender. Yeah. Okay, so I've got a plan now. They're the dimensions that I'm going to follow. I've transferred all the important stuff over onto a specially calibrated stick, which I am now going to map out on the floor so that when I do the bending I can lay the tubing over the top of it to make sure everything's in the right place. So I'll need the plan. This tee's only roughed out. I'll use triangulation actually to make sure that that's at 90 degrees. check the diagonal. Main diagonal tape measure should be 1636. And that is spot on. As is that diagonal. Brilliant. And that's pretty much it. The outline and the main hoop. So what I'll do is I'll bend those two first, and the legs will be sticking out that way. But when they stick out that way, I can pick up on the end of the bend there, mark it, and then bend that last little bit for the bottom legs. And just got to measure how much tubing it's going to take to do it and get cracking. Okay, I think I've worked this out enough to give it a shot. I've got the pipe length calculated at 3200, which gives me a bit of length extra on the ends. Marked out the centre line on the pipe. I've come around to here because that's going to be where the bender grips it first. So I need to know the length of that and the length of the steel used in that radius. I think the steel used in the radius is it's a percentage of the circumference of the radius, in which case this one here we've got 75 degrees, so we want to do 75 over 360 multiplied by 2 pi r, which brings us to about 200. So I've given myself 200 mil on that radius. So I've marked out that line, and I've marked out that line. And what I'll end up doing is, once it's all bent, I'll measure it back to see if that line is actually there. We might need to add a correction factor for the next bends that I make. So I'll put it in the bender and see how it goes. Okay, the first bend's always the easiest, there's nothing else to line it up with. I haven't used this thing before, so it's a bit of a learning experience. I'll bring it through until that first mark is showing. About there. Followed by, it's got to be in line with it. Start there. Take up some slack. Which is that. Tighten that down, just gives a little bit of pressure. Not too much. Okay. As far as I'm aware, it's all ready to bend. Take that off until I actually get up near 80 degrees. See the mark just through here where it's supposed to finish. And centre line of that radius is about where those two lines join, so it's about here somewhere, which I think is about this edge, so when it lines up with this edge. And a little bit of spring back. What I'll do now is I'll just check with this piece over here to see how horizontal that is, because really the distance that we need is between this flat and this incline. So I can just zero it over there actually, bring it back over here. So we're getting pretty close now. So it's sprung back about a degree then when I let it off. Bit of line for future reference. Bend number 1 done. Okay, with the bend finish, it looks like we've come up about 10 mil short from the initial measurements. So what I'll do for the next bend on the other side is I'll add an extra 10 mil onto that, and I think from now on I'll just try and add it, because 10 mil ends up being 5% of the radius. I might just add another 5% to whatever the radius is, and we'll see how that goes, and I'll fine tune the dimensions as we go along. Right, we're ready to make the next bend now. It's been set up in there. I've moved the mark out an extra 10 mil from what I'd made on the other side. We've actually moved the centre line across to compensate for it. I've made sure that that leg is setting vertical, so when it bends this next one it'll be all in line. Use that the digital angle finder to make sure that was all correct. So we're ready to go. Okay, second bend's been made, and main hoop's flat. It's in one plane, which is good. Possibly just a touch wide off the mark, but not by very much, so it's more than acceptable. A little bit over, and then we'll start bending it. The next bend starts at that mark there and just takes the legs down vertical. And there we have the main hoop complete. Pretty happy with it. It's all ended up in between the lines. We've got a little bit extra on the end there, which we'll trim off tomorrow. All in all, it worked really well. Bent quite easily. The Speedworks bender works really, really well. I'd have wanted for the price. I fitted the main hoop in this morning, trimmed a little bit off the base of each leg. It's just sitting in there at the moment. I've made these gussets to tag it back into the seat belt holes there. Once I weld those on, it'll keep it in place while I do the measuring for the front legs, a few other braces. So as you can see, it fits in pretty good. And back in the other brace there. Okay, I'm going to start by taking these on. First time I've tried to record any welding, so we'll see how it goes. Right, so the main hoop's in place now. I held it on by the seatbelt bolts there, and it's just sitting on the plates on the bottom. Next thing to do is the front legs, and I'll do the same as what I did for the bottom of the main hoop. Cut the holes in the floor first and then measure across. I'm pretty sure they're parallel, so it should be about 1200mm, the same as the main hoop. And then start measuring up in here, because there's two. The legs aren't in a single plane, it sort of comes up, kicks in a bit, and then comes back to the main hoop. It should be fun.
Everyday people just like you find a better future. So whether you're working 9 to 5, at home with the kids, or a tradie looking to upgrade, our open study options allow you to study part-time, full-time, on campus or online to help make uni possible for you. Apply now.